In today's video, I'm finally reviewing the Hollywood portrayal of Scottish legend Mary Queen of Scots. Join me as I take you to some Scottish filming locations used in the film and talk about the good and the bad of this movie. Alright, okay, Mary Queen of Scots, the brand new Hollywood blockbuster, is finally out in Scotland. It's been so unfortunate that I have not watched it until very recently, until just yesterday actually, but it has not been shown in Scotland first. It was shown in North America, in Canada and all around the world before it was featured in the UK, which is why I did not do a review on it like I said I was going to do. But here it is, it's finally here, I've finally seen it, and I'm going to give you my thoughts in today's episode of the vlog. Mary Queen of Scots, a Scottish reaction and review / also being out and about in Scotland into some very important Mary Queen of Scots locations. Thank you so much for joining in. It's great to have you here, by the way. If you're new to my channel, do not forget to hit the subscribe button and then you will be like family from here on in. Right, Mary Queen of Scots. Let's get started on this wild ride.
Your cousin Mary has returned to take up her throne in Scotland.
The film starring Saoirse Ronan from Ireland and also Margot Robbie from Australia as Mary Queen of Scots and Queen Elizabeth, the two cousins who were in charge of this whole island, the most important country of the world in those days, together at the same time, and also like the kind of battles that went on between them for power. We're going to talk about all of that in today's episode. Scotgasm has continued for quite a long time. We had Outlander, we had Outlaw King, all about Robert the Bruce, Mary Queen of Scots, and also next year there's another film all about Robert the Bruce as well. Just lots going on in terms of film and productions here in Scotland, about Scotland, filmed in Scotland, and like just showing off the beauty of Scotland as well. I absolutely love that. That's what I'm all about here on my channel. So to have these big movies here in Scotland all about this country, about our history, is amazing. And I do want to feature these types of things on my channel, so that is why I've been reviewing all these types of shows in TV programs, in films. But you know what, actually, I think it would be a shame if I didn't film at least part of this video, this review video, actually out in the wilds of Scotland, beautiful scenic Scotland. I'm going to take inspiration from the Mary Queen of Scots film to tell you more about this film out there. So let's go. That over there is Craigmillar Castle right here in Edinburgh, the once home of Mary Queen of Scots. I'm going to tell you about that in just a little second, if I can ever get down for here. So one of the things about Mary Queen of Scots, and indeed all the Scottish films that have appeared over the last 6 months, year, 2 years, showcasing Scotland, have used amazing Scottish scenery, just like this place right here behind me, Craigmillar Castle, which has appeared in Outlander, has appeared in Outlaw King, and they didn't use it for Mary Queen of Scots, which is a wee bit unfortunate because this castle has a big part to play in the real Mary Queen of Scots story. She stayed here several times, and it was in fact in this castle right here where it was said that the Darnley papers were signed. But they did use another castle just down the road on the outskirts of Edinburgh called Blackness. It appeared several times in the film. It got a starring role, to be honest. Blackness Castle played Mary Queen of Scots' home, if you like. That she was in this castle most of the time. It was kind of like the place where she lived day in and day out, is where her court was. And Blackness Castle is so distinctive because you can see the castle actually juts out from some real life rocks that are standing there. Very distinctive, very clear to see. And Blackness Castle has also been used in Outlander, it's also been used in Outlaw King, so it is going to be a popular place this year, I can tell. This land is very important for Mary Queen of Scots. Just down the hill there is a piece of land called Little France. There's a big massive hospital in it right now, but it used to be the place where Mary Queen's French entourage is where they camped out on the fields just down there. It's called Little France. Pretty cool story. They use so many Scottish Highland filming locations. Like throughout the film you saw the Highlands. It was beautiful. The Highlands is what makes Scotland so distinctive. People recognise the Highlands from everywhere in the world, and they used it extensively for the filming. That was amazing to see. They even used the famous Three Sisters Mountains, which you will pass on the road if you go from Glencoe to Fort William. These are all places that we in Scotland can identify with. They used Rannochmoor as well just down the road, and I think they used some of the Scottish West Coast Islands. Anyway, it looked fabulous on screen in this movie. That was one of the big points for this movie, is that it looked glorious. It made Scotland look absolutely fantastic because they used all these locations. Big thumbs up for that, Mary Queen of Scots, and all the other films that have dared to actually film here in Scotland now. Because in the past they just did not do that. They filmed Scottish films elsewhere. which is a great shame. As a footnote as well, I just want to say the set design that they did with all the sets here in Scotland was incredible. The costume design as well, really, really amazing, and I believe they have been nominated for some big award based on the costumes alone, right? Okay, next point of action, next port of call. I'm going to take you guys to a beach just down the road from here, about 25 minutes drive. I actually went there yesterday with my mate to explore it and to show you guys exactly where they filmed some key scenes for Mary Queen of Scots. That's Seacliff Beach, and in the film that is where they landed on the boat from France. They actually landed in the Port of Leith in Edinburgh, but that would have not been anywhere near as scenic. They used Seacliff Beach, which is glorious. Alright, so in Mary Queen of Scots, the film, where Mary lands ashore with her men is right here on Seacliff Bay, in this corner of the beach actually. Although one thing, she actually jumps off the boat and kind of swims a little bit into the waves there, which I tell you what, hats off to her, because that water is generally freezing throughout the year, even in the middle of summer, trust me. So this beach has appeared in both Mary Queen of Scots, massive Hollywood production, and Outlaw King as well. I wanted to do this review a bit different and just take you to some of the filming locations. So, Mary Queen of Scots, first scenes, opening scenes of Mary arriving in Scotland, right here in this corner. I can confirm it's flipping freezing, and now my feet are wet as well. In 2 or 3 scenes, when Mary decides that she's actually going to go back to England to seek refuge, she gets the boat in this harbour. This harbour, by the way, is the smallest harbour in Scotland. Took off from right from these rocks, and she also took counsel from some of her French maids on the rocks just over there. Seacliff Bay, which is situated just outside of North Berwick in East Lothian, was an awesome backdrop in the film, and I'm pretty sure I accidentally stumbled upon them actually filming the scenes as well. Okay, so I think one of the big points of this film, and something that a lot of people have actually complained about and discussed over and over again, is the historical accuracy of Mary Queen of Scots. And indeed any film that has covered Scotland. That portrayal of William Wallace in Braveheart, for example, great film, but historically speaking, not true in the slightest. Outlaw King, discussing a similar time period, did a very good job on historical accuracy. So that was something, a big talking point about Mary Queen of Scots, because it is a famous tale of Mary Queen of Scots and her life, her adventures in Scotland. It was an epic tale, and would they stick true to the story? And you know what? I think they did a pretty good job. At the end of the day, they're trying to highlight 2 very powerful and interesting women and what they got up to in their lives in those times. They're never ever going to fit all the details into a film. You would need a series the size of Game of Thrones to cover all the intricacies of Mary Queen of Scots' life, for example. But at the end of the day, you watch this film and you get a good understanding of the problems, the challenges that were faced by both Mary and Queen Elizabeth. Part of the problem of portraying this film is the emotional significance people have to Mary and the real life locations she was associated with, like Linlithgow Palace, where she was born in 1542. Experts and people who really know the story do have some complaints about this film. Of course they do. And I think one of the key sticking points, one of the things that they didn't like the most, was the fact that in the film there was a brief meeting between Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, which in real life never happened. They only communicated via letter. They wrote to each other often, but they never actually met, or so we are led to believe. So in that scene where they did meet, it did rile a lot of people up who are very, very keen on the history. However, if we talk about creative license and how they filmed that scene, I think it was very, very well done. They met in this kind of secretive hut out in the woods somewhere, right? Very discreet. Nobody would have known where it is. Only a couple of people with them knew that this was happening. And when you get inside the hut, there was this bizarre scenario of curtains all over the place. Like from front to the back of the hut was like a maze of curtains, kind of see-through lace curtains hanging from the roof. Mary Queen of Scots was at one side and Queen Elizabeth came in the other. So they're both for a very brief time in this hut and talking to each other through curtains, and they only catch a very close one-on-one glimpse for a brief moment. Most of the time they're talking through this curtains. And I think they did that in such a genius way in terms of cinematography, because it portrays the fact that they're meeting, but they're not really. It is a very back alley kind of meeting that nobody's supposed to know about. The writing that they used for the speech in this meeting was absolutely genius, because Queen Elizabeth says to Mary very clearly, this meeting has not happened. Nobody will ever know that we met, right? This is a secret. And if you dare tell anybody that we met in this room, I'm going to deny it, and I'm going to make you a traitor for saying it. So in real life, if that meeting actually took place, it could have done, like they said, and nobody was ever to know about it. So like, how do we know that that never happened? It could have happened. I think what the filmmakers did was very genius in a way that if it happened in the way that they portrayed it, we would never know in real history, because it was totally secretive. I like the way they did it. It didn't bother me, even knowing the fact that they didn't meet, that they actually met in the film. It didn't bother me at all. And I think the thing is, if you're going to get hung up big time by historical accuracies or inaccuracies, you're probably not going to enjoy this film. But anyway, listen, in terms of historical accuracy, I want to tell you a little about the story of David Rizzio, right? The Italian man who was the hand of the Queen Mary. I don't think that's the right term, but he was a very, very close friend of Queen Mary and escorted her everywhere. And there was a very famous moment in real life history where David Rizzio was murdered in Holyrood Palace by Lord Darnley, which was Mary Queen of Scots' husband, in front of her in the room. And I'm going to take you to exactly where that happened in Holyrood Palace right now. Let's go. One of the great privileges of living in Scotland is that we have all these living pieces of history where real life figures once roamed. Mary Queen of Scots lived at Holyrood Palace for some of the most interesting years of her life. And it was here that David Rizzio, one of her closest friends and private secretary, was brutally murdered by Mary's husband, Lord Darnley. It's fascinating to walk through the exact chambers where this scene, as excellently portrayed in the film, actually took place. You can even see a plaque where Rizzio's body lay, and some say you can even see a ghostly blood stain on the floor. If you guys are in Edinburgh, go to Holyrood Palace. I had only been for the first time a couple of months ago because of Mary Queen of Scots, the film, and I regret that I've never been before. It's like a really cool place to check out. And I highly recommend you get an earphone so you can listen to the audio guide as you walk around. Right, okay, something that I absolutely loved about this film, what it shows through the dialogue, through the conflicts, is that the problems that people faced in terms of politics of Scotland in the Great Britain scenario then actually are not that different to how they are today. Because the story isn't really Scotland against England. There's a bit of that, of course, but actually what the story is about is religious conflict between Protestants and Catholics and Protestants. And I think the film did an absolutely fantastic job of showing that that is what the fact is. This was a civil war between religions. John Knox, who was the founding father, I think, of Presbyterianism in Scotland, something like that, controversial figure. He was played by David Tennant, the Scottish actor, Doctor Who. And I think, to be honest with you, David Tennant's portrayal of John Knox was one of the major highlights of this film. He is obviously an excellent actor, but his portrayal of John Knox was sensational in this film. I was scared of the man, and really it was his backstage dealing with his religious community that he was the leader of that really kind of stoked the fire that made for the conflicts between Protestants and Catholics, and the reason why he would never ever accept, first of all, a woman in Queen Mary who was a Catholic to be the crown of Scotland. He would never accept it, and he did anything in his power to make sure that that did not last. And the thing is, if you think about politics nowadays in Scotland, thankfully a lot of that is gone, right? Thankfully, the sectarianism that divided this country for so long, and not just this country, other countries as well. I'm just so thankful that church, religion has absolutely no say and nothing to do with politics that we have in this country whatsoever, and that is the rightful place of it. And this is a prime example, as shown in the Mary Queen of Scots film, of how much religion interfered with people's lives and caused so many wars. In those times, it was everything. Religion ruled the world, and it ruled the countries, and it ruled who was going to be kings and queens. And I think the film did an excellent job of displaying that to us, to kind of really opening that picture to us, that it was religion, that this battle, this Civil War really was all about.
We have a scourge upon our land.
I think on a final note, what I would like to say about this film is, it also did a really good job of holding a mirror up to what's happening in the world today, because this is a story that was like 500-600 years ago or something like that, right? About two important female characters. Female empowerment, and yet at the same time we could see that the queens were both manipulated, they were backstabbed against, and people plotted against them constantly to take power off of them, mostly because they were female. And I think that's an important story to tell simply because of the fact that that's what happened back then, but also when you mirror that to modern day politics, the Me Too movement, female empowerment, rights for everybody, equal rights. I think there's a lot of discussions happening now that could also be related back to what we saw in that film. In the last 500 years, things have changed a lot, obviously, but it's funny that you can see similar patterns of behaviours and similar problems arising from it. It would be wrong to ignore and not discuss this point of criticism. Indeed, one of the main reasons it seemed the film was badly reviewed on Rotten Tomatoes was because of the current political climate in the United States. I mean, just take a look at this comment. Philip says, "For anyone who absolutely hates white people, who hates historical accuracy, and who loves an identity politics agenda and historical revisionism shoved in their face, then this is the film for you." Wow, Philip! The film also had a very, very diverse cast. And you know what? There's been a lot of people out there that have criticised this. At the end of the day, it is a film. And yes, you could argue there would have been no black people who would have been in a position of power back then. Certainly not in a lord position. But there absolutely would have been black people. They would have been in Queen Elizabeth's court. So a lot of people have grumbled about that. But I think that's I really do think that is a moot point, because they used excellent actors throughout. And I personally agree with the film's director, Josie Rourke, that actually, why can't a very diverse cast play different roles, even if it is a time period? Why not? Because if we're going to take creative liberties on some of the details that happened in the story, you might as well have a diverse cast. Anyway, that was my views on this film. I actually really liked it. It's a great film. I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. I think that is how films are generally ranked. I'm not a professional film critic, but nonetheless, 4 stars out of 5. It was good. To be honest, it's generally not my style of film that I like to watch. There wasn't very much action. The fight scenes were a little bit lame, in my opinion, in terms of really, really poor blood and guts and gory, because when you compare the fight scenes in this film to the fight scenes in, for example, Outlaw King, there was a massive, massive difference. So in that sense, not my type of film, but nonetheless, it was mostly dialogue, it was mostly politics, and acting. Amazing acting throughout, absolutely. As I said already, David Tennant. But the 2 lead actors in Saoirse Ronan and Margot Robbie were absolutely sensational. They did so much in portraying the characters with the things they said and how they delivered the lines. It was absolutely phenomenal. Really, really liked that part of it. And like, if you're interested in Scotland, just go and see this. And I promise you, one thing you will not be let down on is the Scottish scenery. They used all filming locations from Scotland, as I previously alluded to. That is everything for me. To see that on film is just incredible. We've grown up in Scotland not seeing that before. So now we're at an age where Scotland is being presented in such a gorgeous light, like the country that we know is beautiful, in Hollywood productions, in cinemas around the world. Very, very cool to see that. So that is my review. I'd love to know what you guys think of it. If you've seen the film, down in the comments below. It'd be great to know your opinions, whether you're somebody who's from Scotland or whether you're not from Scotland. Just be good to know your point of view. But you know what? I think the life of Mary, Queen of Scots, was so interesting and was so centered around the place where I actually live, that I really want to know more. Like I said to you guys before in previous videos, we're not taught about this in school very often and very thoroughly. So I want to do my own research. I want to go on a Mary, Queen of Scots kind of voyage, if you like, of discovery, of learning more about the person, where she lived and where she travelled to, her tours through Scotland, and how she ultimately ended up on the chopping block. Thank you so much for watching, guys. It has been great to discuss Scotland with you, a Scottish cultural film, if you like, again on this channel. So thanks a lot for watching. I will speak to you again really soon with some more video content on my channel. And until the next adventure, I hope you have a good night, morning, evening, afternoon, or whatever time of day it is wherever you are in the world. Take care.